The night my husband laughed at my body was the night something inside me stopped breathing. Not my heart, not my body, just my belief in him. He didn't even lower his voice. We were at a dinner party, surrounded by his friends, crystal glasses clinking, soft music playing in the background. I was wearing my favorite dark blue dress, the one I thought made me look elegant. He looked at me, smirked, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Maybe you should skip dessert, you've skipped the gym enough." The table went silent for half a second. Then came the laughter, soft at first, then louder. My cheeks burned. My fingers tightened around the fork. I forced a smile like it was nothing, like I was used to it. Because I was. On the drive home, he didn't apologize. He sighed. "You used to take care of yourself," he said, staring at the road. "Look at other women your age. They don't let themselves go like this." Other women. That phrase stabbed deeper than the joke. Weeks later, he stopped coming home early. Then he stopped coming home at all. And one morning, standing in our kitchen, with sunlight pouring through the window like it was mocking me, he said it. "I met someone. I didn't cry, not yet. She's different. She works out. She's disciplined. She inspires me." "You mean she's younger?" I wanted to say. "You mean she's smaller? You mean she looks like the version of me you married?" But I didn't say anything, because when someone has already replaced you in their mind, words don't matter. He packed a suitcase that night. Before walking out, he looked at me, really looked at me, and said, "You should use this as motivation." The door closed, and the silence that followed was louder than the insult. That night, I stood in front of the mirror for a long time. I didn't see a monster. I saw stretch marks from carrying our child. I saw softness that came from stress, late nights, and emotional eating while he was working late. I saw a woman who had given everything and still wasn't enough. I slid down the wall and cried until my chest hurt, but somewhere between the tears and the exhaustion, a question formed in my mind. What if this isn't about my weight? What if it's about my worth? The first week alone felt like drowning. Friends called, pretending to check in, but really fishing for gossip. I heard she's a fitness trainer. Apparently she's only 26. Are you going to try to win him back? Win him back. Like he was a prize, like I was in competition. I stopped answering calls. I deleted photos. I avoided mirrors. Food became both comfort and enemy. Some nights I'd open the fridge and stare at leftovers, hearing his voice in my head. "Skip dessert. Look at other women. You let yourself go?" The worst part wasn't losing him. It was starting to believe him. One afternoon, I found myself scrolling through his new girlfriend's social media, flat stomach, tight dresses, gym selfies, comments filled with fire emojis. And there he was in one photo, his arm around her waist, smiling the smile he used to give me. My chest tightened. For a moment, I almost texted him. I typed, "Was I ever enough for you?" I deleted it, because I already knew the answer. That evening, I wrote something instead. Not a message to him, a note to myself. "You're not leaving this story as the abandoned wife." I folded the paper and placed it in my drawer. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. Not because I felt strong, because I couldn't sleep. I put on old sneakers and stepped outside. The air was cold. My body felt heavy. My legs ached after just 5 minutes of walking. I almost turned back. "What's the point?" A voice whispered. "He's gone. He chose someone else." But another voice, quieter, steadier, answered. "This isn't about him anymore." The first month was ugly. I didn't magically transform. I didn't glow. I sweated. I skipped workouts. I cried in parking lots after weighing myself. The scale barely moved. My confidence moved even less. But something else shifted. Discipline. Every time I wanted to quit, I remembered the ladder at that dinner table. Every time I wanted to binge, I remembered him comparing me to other women. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I refused to let that be my final identity. I hired a coach with money I could barely afford. I learned about nutrition instead of starving myself. I lifted weights instead of just running from my feelings. My body resisted at first, so did my mind. There were days I stared at my reflection and still saw the before version. But slowly, almost invisibly, strength replaced softness. Not just in my arms, in my posture, in my voice. 3 months in, he texted me for the first time. "Hope you're doing okay." That was it. No apology. No regret. Just curiosity. I didn't reply. Not because I wanted to seem strong, but because I finally understood something. He left because he thought I was weak, and I had been. Not physically. Emotionally, I had shrunk myself to fit his comfort. I had laughed at jokes that hurt. I had accepted crumbs and called it love. 6 months passed. The gym became my therapy. Late nights became business planning sessions. Because once I realized I could rebuild my body, I asked myself, what else can I rebuild? I started documenting my journey, not glamorous selfies, real ones, sweaty face, messy hair, honest captions about betrayal, self-worth, and starting over at 38. Women began messaging me. "Your story feels like mine. How did you find the courage?" I'm going through the same thing. For the first time in years, I felt seen. Not for how I looked, for how I endured. And then came the setback. An injury, a torn ligament during a workout. Doctor's orders, no intense training for weeks. The old voice came back immediately. "See, you'll never be her. You'll never be enough." I sat in my car outside the clinic and gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. This was the moment most people quit. This was the moment I used to quit. But pain doesn't scare someone who's already been abandoned. I adjusted. Upper body workouts only. Nutrition tighter than ever. Physical therapy instead of self-pity. And during those 4 slow weeks, something unexpected happened. My platform grew. More women resonated with my vulnerability than with my progress photos. I wasn't just getting fit. I was becoming unbreakable. 1 year after he left, I ran into them at a charity event. I almost didn't go, but I did. Not in a revenge dress, not in something desperate, just confident. Strong, composed, he saw me first. His eyes widened for a fraction of a second before he masked it. She looked at me too, measuring, comparing. For the first time, I didn't feel small. I felt steady. He walked over. You look different. I smiled politely. So do you? We exchanged small talk like strangers who never shared a life, but I saw it in his eyes, confusion, regret, curiosity, and when he asked, "Can we talk sometime?" something inside me almost trembled. Almost. Because there was one more thing he didn't know. One thing that had been growing quietly behind the scenes. The note I wrote to myself that night, it wasn't just a promise, it became a plan. And tomorrow, he's gonna find out exactly what I did with it. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. Not because I was anxious, because I was ready. For months, I had been building something quietly, something bigger than my body, bigger than my pain. While he thought I was just coping, I was studying. While he thought I was healing, I was strategizing. The note I wrote that night, "You are not leaving this story," as the abandoned wife, had evolved. Underneath it, weeks later, I had added another line. "You will build a life so full that his absence becomes irrelevant." I didn't just transform physically. I got certified as a fitness and wellness coach during my recovery from the injury. Long nights, ice packs wrapped around my knee, laptop balanced on my thighs, modules playing while the house was silent. There were moments I doubted myself. Who are you to coach anyone? You couldn't even keep your own husband. That voice was cruel. But I answered it. I'm the woman who survived him. That's more than enough. When my certification arrived in my email inbox, I stared at the screen for a long time. It felt bigger than a degree, bigger than a document. It felt like proof. Proof that I wasn't rebuilding to impress him. I was rebuilding to expand beyond him. I launched a small online coaching program first. 10 women signed up, then 20, then 50. Most of them weren't trying to look like his new girlfriend. They were trying to feel like themselves again. We talked about boundaries as much as burpees, self-worth as much as squats, discipline as much as dieting, and something strange happened. The stronger my business grew, the less I cared about whether he noticed. Until the day he did. He called. Not a casual text this time, an actual call. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times, then I answered. His voice sounded softer, less certain. "I've been seeing your posts," he said. "You've really changed." There was a pause. "I didn't realize how much I hurt you." I leaned back in my chair, looking at the city lights outside my apartment window. Hurt, such a small word for what he did. "You didn't hurt me," I said calmly. "You revealed me." Silence on the other end. He wasn't expecting that. He cleared his throat. "Things aren't what I thought they'd be." Of course they weren't. The fantasy fades when reality demands depth. "She's different than I imagined," he admitted. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need them. For the first time, I felt something close to gratitude, not for the pain, but for the perspective. "If you ever want to grab coffee," he continued carefully. "Just to talk, I'd like that." A year ago, I would have melted at that invitation. Today, I checked my calendar. I'm fully booked this month. I said honestly, and I was. Between clients, speaking events, and launching my first group coaching challenge, my days were packed, not with distractions, with purpose. Weeks later, I received an invitation in the mail. A local wellness summit had selected me as one of the keynote speakers. Me, the woman who once cried in front of her fridge at midnight. The woman who believed she was too much in all the wrong ways. Now I was being asked to speak about resilience. I almost laughed. Life has a strange sense of humor. The event was scheduled at one of the largest venues in the city. Hundreds of attendees, business owners, influencers, coaches, and sponsors. One of the sponsors, his company, I stared at the logo on the brochure for a long time. Fate, coincidence, or just the natural consequence of 2 people moving in opposite directions. I didn't tell him I was speaking, and he didn't know. The night before the event, I stood in front of my mirror again, the same mirror that once reflected a broken woman. Now it reflected someone grounded. My body had changed, yes. Stronger arms, defined waist, steady posture. But the real transformation was in my eyes. They no longer searched for approval. They held certainty. The morning of the summit, I arrived early. The hall buzzed with energy. Staff members rushed around adjusting lights and banners. I checked in backstage. And that's when I saw him, across the room. In a tailored suit. Laughing with colleagues, he looked confident, but not fulfilled. There's a difference. His eyes scanned the space absent-mindedly, and then they landed on me. Time didn't slow down. It sharpened. Recognition. Shock, something else. He excused himself from his group and walked toward me. Each step measured, each breath steady. "You're speaking?" he asked, disbelief barely hidden. Yes! His gaze shifted subtly, taking in the badge around my neck, the confidence in my stance, the absence of hesitation. I didn't know! I know! A staff member approached me. You're on in 10 minutes. 10 minutes. 10 minutes before I step onto that stage. 10 minutes before he sits in that audience. 10 minutes before he hears the story, not of a woman abandoned, but of a woman awakened. He swallowed. I've been thinking about us. There it was. The word. Us. I looked at him carefully, not with anger, not with longing, with clarity. There is no us, I said gently. There was a lesson. His jaw tightened slightly. I made a mistake. Maybe he did. Maybe he didn't. But it wasn't my responsibility to rewrite his regret into redemption. You didn't choose wrong, I said. You chose what reflected you at the time. And you, he asked quietly. I chose myself. The announcement echoed through the speakers, calling my name. Applause began lightly from the crowd. I turned toward the stage entrance. Bright lights waiting, a microphone, a room full of people who didn't know the full story yet. As I stepped forward, I felt the weight of the past dissolve behind me. He reached out instinctively. Wait, I paused but didn't turn fully. I never thought you'd become this, he said. For a second, I considered all the possible responses, sharp ones, triumphant ones, petty ones. Instead, I smiled slightly. Neither did you. And with that, I walked onto the stage. The lights hit my face. The applause grew louder. In the third row, I could see him sitting down slowly, eyes fixed on me. The microphone stood inches away. Hundreds of faces stared up, waiting. I took a breath and began, but what I said next changed everything. I wrapped my fingers around the microphone and let the silence stretch. Not awkward, intentional. I want to start with a confession, I said. A few people leaned forward. A year ago, I was sitting on my kitchen floor, convinced I wasn't enough. The room softened. I believed that if I could just be smaller, quieter, prettier, more disciplined, someone would finally stay. A faint murmur rippled through the audience. I was wrong. I didn't look at him. Not yet. I wasn't abandoned because I gained weight. I was abandoned because I built my identity around someone else's approval. The words landed heavier than I expected. I used to think strength meant fitting into the right dress size. Now I know it means setting the right boundaries. Applause broke out, not loud, but growing. I walked slowly across the stage, feeling the ground steady beneath my heels. When someone leaves you for a better version, I continued, you have two choices. You can compete or you can evolve. My eyes finally scanned the crowd. They found him. He wasn't smiling anymore. He was listening. I chose evolution. I told them about the first morning walk when my legs trembled, about the injury that almost broke me, about the nights I doubted myself more than anyone else ever could. I didn't rebuild to win him back, I said. I rebuilt so I would never beg for love again. The applause was louder now. I saw women nodding, men shifting uncomfortably, people pulling out their phones to record. And here's the truth no one tells you, I said, lowering my voice. The glow up isn't the revenge. The detachment is silence, the kind that hums. When you no longer need the person who once made you feel small, that's power. I ended the speech not with anger, not with triumph, but with calm certainty. Don't shrink to keep someone. Expand until they can't contain you. The room erupted, standing ovation. I stepped back from the microphone as the applause echoed through the hall. For a brief second, I closed my eyes, not to savor their validation, but to remember the woman on the kitchen floor. She made this possible. Backstage was chaos, handshakes, compliments, business cards, media requests. You were incredible. That was transformative. I need your program for my sister. Through the blur, I saw him waiting near the exit corridor, still unmoving, as if unsure whether he had the right to approach. Eventually, the crowd thinned. He stepped forward. I didn't know you felt that way, he said quietly. I studied his face. There was regret there, but also something else. Ego bruised by my growth. You didn't ask. I replied. He exhaled slowly. I thought pushing you would motivate you. You didn't push me, I said calmly. You replaced me. The words didn't come from anger. They came from clarity. He ran a hand through his hair. She's not what I thought, he admitted again. We argue. She's focused on her career. She doesn't need me. There it was. He missed being needed, not loving. Needed, I almost felt sorry for him. I don't need you either, I said gently. His eyes flickered. That's what scares me. A year ago, that sentence would have felt like victory. Now, it felt like confirmation. You didn't lose me because I gained weight, I said. You lost me because you couldn't grow with me. He opened his mouth to respond, then closed it. There was nothing to argue. Because growth isn't negotiable, it's visible. I've been thinking, he said finally. Maybe we rushed, maybe we can start over. Start over. As if the humiliation at that dinner, as if the comparison, as if the public jokes, as if the replacement, as if those were minor glitches in an otherwise healthy love story. You don't get to return to a version of me that doesn't exist anymore, I said. His jaw tightened slightly. I made a mistake, and I made a decision. The hallway felt very quiet, very final. He looked past me toward the stage. You don't even look at me the same. I don't feel the same, I answered honestly. There was no hate in my chest. No rage, just space. Peaceful, wide space. You think you're better than me now? He asked, a hint of defensiveness creeping in. No, I said softly. I think I'm better for me. That hit harder than any insult because it removed him from the equation entirely. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he asked the question I knew was coming. Is there someone else? I almost smiled. There wasn't. Not yet. But that wasn't the point. There's me, I said, and for the first time that felt like enough. A staff member approached, reminding me about the networking dinner upstairs. I have to go, I told him. He nodded slowly. I never meant to destroy your confidence. Ian, I said. You revealed where it was missing. He watched me walk away, not chasing, not arguing, just watching. At the dinner, investors approached me about expanding my coaching platform into a larger wellness brand. A publisher asked if I had considered writing a book. A podcast host invited me for an interview next week. Opportunities multiplied in real time, not because I became thinner, but because I became certain. Across the room, I saw him once more, standing alone, observing. For the first time since our marriage began, I wasn't orbiting around his attention. He was orbiting around my absence. Later that night, back in my apartment, I opened the drawer. The note was still there. You are not leaving this story as the abandoned wife. Under it, I had added another sentence months ago. You will become the woman who doesn't flinch. I unfolded it carefully, smoothed the creases. And then, beneath those lines, I wrote one final sentence. He may have left for someone fitter and younger, but he will remember me as the woman he underestimated. I folded the paper again, not as a reminder of pain, but as proof of evolution. My phone buzzed. A message from him. I don't know if I ever said this, but I'm proud of you. I stared at the screen. A year ago, those words would have healed wounds. Now, they felt like an echo from a closed chapter. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I walked to the mirror one last time that night, not to check my reflection, but to check my resolve. The woman staring back at me didn't need applause, didn't need comparison, didn't need redemption from someone who couldn't recognize her value. She needed expansion. And tomorrow morning, I had a meeting that would change the scale of everything I had built. A partnership that would take my platform nationwide. He thought my transformation was the climax. He thought the stage speech was the peak. He had no idea. The real shift was just beginning. And when the next headline about me appears, it won't mention him at all. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise again, but this time it wasn't from anxiety or ambition. It was alignment. The city was still half asleep as I stood by the window with a cup of black coffee, watching the sky shift from deep indigo to pale gold. Today wasn't about proving anything, it was about expanding everything. The meeting was at 9 a.m. with a national wellness brand that had been following my platform for months. They wanted partnership, licensing, a full-scale program rollout under my name. A year ago, I was Googling or to lose weight after 35. Now, executives were pitching me expansion strategies. Life doesn't just change, it pivots. The conference room overlooked the skyline. Floor to ceiling glass, polished table, crisp suits. They shook my hand like I belonged there. Because I did. Will you believe your story connects on a psychological level? The CEO said. This isn't just fitness, it's identity transformation. Identity transformation. That phrase stayed with me. I wasn't selling workouts. I was teaching women how to detach from the voices that shrink them. By the time I left the building, I had a signed preliminary agreement, 6 figures, expansion funding, national campaign, my name on billboards within months. As I stepped outside, the air felt lighter. Not because of the money, because of the validation from myself. My phone buzzed again. Him. I've been thinking about what you said yesterday. I didn't open it immediately. I slid the phone back into my bag. For once, his thoughts were not urgent. Later that evening, I attended a small private gathering hosted by the summit organizers. Influencers, entrepreneurs, media. Conversations flowed, opportunities multiplied. And then, unexpectedly, she walked in. His girlfriend, the younger, fitter one. She froze when she saw me. Recognition flickered across her face. Not hostility. Assessment. She approached with measured confidence. You were incredible yesterday, she said politely. Thank you. Up close, I saw what I hadn't allowed myself to see before. She wasn't my enemy. She was just a chapter he chose. I didn't know you two were married when we met, she said carefully. There it was. Truth revealing itself without drama. I figured, I replied calmly. She hesitated. He doesn't talk about you much, but after your speech, he couldn't stop. Interesting. He talks about your discipline, she continued. Your growth. I smiled slightly. He used to talk about my weight. Her expression shifted subtle discomfort. I didn't know. I know. We stood in silence for a moment. Then she asked quietly, do you ever wish it hadn't happened? The question was honest, vulnerable. I thought about it, about the humiliation, the abandonment, the nights of doubt, and then I thought about the woman I've become. No, I said truthfully, because if it hadn't happened, I would still be shrinking to stay chosen. She nodded slowly. I don't think he expected you to rise like this. Neither did I. She offered a small, respectful smile before stepping away, and for the first time I felt no comparison, no competition, just clarity. Later that night he called again. This time I answered. She spoke to you? He asked immediately. Yes. What did she say? That you talk about me? Silence. I never meant to make you feel less, he said. But you did. I thought I was pushing you to improve. You were pushing me to disappear? He inhaled sharply. I see that now. Growth is funny. It often arrives too late for the person who needed it sooner. I don't hate you, I told him. That almost makes it worse, he admitted. I don't need you, I corrected. Another pause. Are you happy? He asked. The question felt genuine. I looked around my apartment, the signed contracts on the table, the schedule filled with client calls, the strength in my body, the peace in my chest. Yes, I said simply. I don't think I am, he whispered. And that was the moment I understood something profound. Revenge isn't about watching someone suffer. It's about no longer caring whether they do. I hope you find that, I said, and I meant it. Weeks passed quickly. The national campaign launched. My face appeared on digital ads with the tagline, Revealed.
Reclaim, rise.
Enrollment requests flooded in, interviews followed. A podcast clip from my summit speech went viral. Comments poured in from women across the country. You gave me courage. I left my toxic relationship because of you. I stopped apologizing for existing. Each message felt heavier than any insult he ever threw at me. Because this time, my voice was expanding, not shrinking. One evening, as I left a studio after filming promotional content, I saw him standing near the entrance. Unexpected, unannounced, he looked different, not physically. Internally unsettled. I didn't want to text, he said. I needed to see you. I studied him calmly. What for? I think I made the biggest mistake of my life. There it was, not subtle, not layered, direct. I keep thinking about what we had, he continued. Before everything got distorted, before everything got honest, I thought, you miss comfort? I said gently, no, I miss you. You miss who I was. He stepped closer, I'd choose you now. That sentence might have broken me a year ago. Now it clarified everything. You didn't choose me when I needed choosing, I said evenly. He swallowed. I didn't know you were becoming this. That's the point, I replied. He reached for my hand instinctively. Familiar, but I stepped back. Not dramatically, just enough. I'm not angry, I told him, but I'm not available. His eyes searched mine for hesitation. There was none. You really moved on, he said quietly. Yes. Is there someone else? I paused, then smiled faintly. There's someone building something extraordinary. He waited. That's me. For the first time, he didn't argue, didn't persuade, didn't defend. He just nodded slowly. I underestimated you, he admitted. Yes, I said softly. You did. The wind brushed past us in the parking lot. Cool? Clean? Final? Hope you're happy, he said again. I am, and this time I didn't add anything. Because there was nothing left to explain. He stood there for a moment longer, as if trying to memorize the version of me he no longer had access to. Then he turned and walked away. No dramatic music, no shouting, no tears, just distance. As I drove home, I realized something unexpected. I didn't feel victorious. I felt free. Free from comparison, free from needing approval. Free from the narrative that my value was tied to desirability. He left for someone fitter and younger. But he returned to someone stronger and unavailable. And that difference changed the entire ending. A month after that parking lot conversation, I stopped expecting his name to light up my phone. Not because I blocked him, because I no longer waited. There's a quiet shift that happens when closure stops being a conversation and becomes a decision. I had already made mine. The national campaign exploded faster than anyone predicted. My inbox overflowed with partnership offers. A publishing house sent over a formal book proposal. Women lined up after live events, not to ask how much weight I'd lost, but how I'd learned to stop measuring my worth in someone else's eyes. And somewhere in the middle of the chaos, I realized something almost ironic. The woman he left for didn't destroy me. The woman he underestimated created me. One evening, I was invited to speak at a charity gala, the same kind of formal event where he once mocked me in front of a table full of laughing faces. Same atmosphere, same polished glasses, same background music. Different woman. I chose a dress that fit my body, not to hide it, not to prove anything. It wasn't about being the slimmest in the room. It was about being the most grounded. As I stepped into the hall, conversations hummed around me. Cameras flashed occasionally. My name appeared on the digital screen near the stage as one of the keynote donors for a women's empowerment initiative I had just funded. Funded. That word meant more than any compliment. Halfway through the evening, I felt it before I saw it. His presence. He was standing near the back alone, not with her, not with colleagues, just watching. For a split second, the old memory tried to resurface, the dinner joke, the humiliation, the sting. But it didn't stick, because that version of me no longer lived here. When my name was announced, I walked to the stage calmly. The spotlight hit, but it didn't intimidate me. It felt familiar now. I want to dedicate tonight's donation. I began, to every woman who was told she wasn't enough. The room quieted. To every woman who was compared, criticized, or quietly replaced, my voice didn't shake. Sometimes the greatest gift someone can give you is leaving. A ripple moved through the crowd, because when they walk away, you finally meet yourself without their shadow. Applause built slowly. Then stronger. I didn't look at him this time. I didn't need to. I used to think my glow up would be my revenge, I continued. But I was wrong. My peace became my revenge. My growth became my revenge. My indifference became my revenge. The room stood in applause, not because I attacked anyone, but because I transcended something. After the speech, people surrounded me, thank yous, handshakes, admiration. And then, as the crowd parted slightly, there he was. Closer this time, he looked smaller, not physically, energetically. I heard every word, he said quietly. I know, you don't even flinch when you see me anymore. I smiled gently. That's growth. He nodded slowly. She moved out. He admitted, I didn't ask why. She said, I still talk about you like you're unfinished business. That almost made me laugh. I'm not business, I said softly. I'm a closed chapter. His eyes searched mine for something, anger, longing, nostalgia. They found none. Do you ever think about us? He asked. I considered the question honestly. I think about who I was, I said, and I'm grateful she doesn't exist anymore. He inhaled deeply as if bracing himself. If I asked for another chance, you wouldn't get it. No hesitation, no cruelty. Just truth. His shoulders dropped slightly. You really don't need me? No, I said, I don't. The silence between us wasn't tense, it was final. He looked around at the event, the donors, the banners with my foundation's name, the women lining up to speak to me. I never thought you'd outgrow me, he said. That's because you thought I revolved around you. That landed. He didn't argue. He couldn't. I'm sorry, he whispered. And for the first time, I believed he meant it. But apologies are not time machines. They don't rewind humiliation. They don't undo abandonment. They simply arrive when the lesson is complete. I forgive you, I said. His head lifted slightly, surprised. But forgiveness doesn't reopen doors. He swallowed. I see that. We stood there one last moment. Two people who once shared a life, now sharing nothing but history. I hope you find someone who chooses you the way you deserve, he said. I already did, I replied. He looked confused. You chose yourself, he realized. Yes, and that was the ending he never expected. Not a dramatic rejection, not public humiliation, not revenge in the way he feared. Just a woman who no longer waited to be chosen. He gave a small nod, a quiet acceptance. Then he turned and walked away, not defeated, not chased, just aware. Aware that he had witnessed a transformation he no longer had access to. As I stepped outside into the cool night air, I felt something settle inside me. Not triumph, not bitterness. Completion. A year ago, I stood in front of a mirror wondering why I wasn't enough. Tonight, I stood under the open sky, knowing I was more than enough at any size, at any age, in any room. My phone buzzed. A notification from my foundation's page, another major partnership confirmed. I smiled, not because he saw it, but because I built it. I drove home alone, but not lonely. In my apartment, I opened that drawer one final time. The note was still there. You are not leaving this story as the abandoned wife. Underneath it, you will become the woman who doesn't flinch. And at the bottom, the last sentence I had written weeks ago. He may have left for someone fitter and younger, but he will remember me as the woman he underestimated. I added one final line, and I will remember him as the man who unknowingly introduced me to my power. I folded the paper slowly. Then, instead of placing it back in the drawer, I tore it in half, not out of anger. Out of evolution, I didn't need reminders anymore. Because the lesson had become identity. As I turned off the lights and walked toward my bedroom, I realized something beautifully simple. He thought leaving me would shrink my world. Instead, it expanded it. He thought replacing me would break me. Instead, it revealed me. And in the end, he didn't lose me because I wasn't enough. He lost me because I finally understood that I was